Hi, and welcome to Behind the Briefcase. Yes, we're back for another episode, and we've got a fantastic guest with us today. I'll introduce this person in a minute. A few things that I just want to run through with you if you've logged into this and it's the first time. There's many episodes on Behind the Briefcase, and you can find them on YouTube. So just go into YouTube and type Behind the Briefcase, LinkedIn. I think it's Spotify, Instagram, all those usual places that you can find this. You'll get there. We've had some amazing guests on Behind the Briefcase from IT business experts, from the tech world, people within health and social care. We've had influencers, people that have changed law and legislation. So, one I always refer to that's a really good one to watch is the Paula McGowan, who was the mother of Oliver McGowan. That's a real emotional one. And there's been some fantastic ones, including the Christmas special we done, where we had around about 9 CEOs in a room for a couple of hours. And we literally just looked at the industry of health and social care and what needed to happen to it, and done a full review from each of the businesses of the previous year and what was to come. So things along monetary values with budgets, finance, etc. like that. So if you are really interested in finding out how business ticks, what it takes to be strong in character and leadership, how to start from the ground up, how to grow and scale, you are going to find all the people you need on Behind the Briefcase. So have a look back, watch some of the episodes or all of the episodes if you can. I like to listen to them when I'm actually on the treadmill in the gym. It kind of like is a really good motivator, and you can do 2 things at once. And it's really good and interesting. I love doing these interviews because I get to meet these very interesting people as well. I probably didn't introduce my name, but it's on the screen. So I'm Paul Blaine. You can follow me on LinkedIn as well, and you will find things that go up on there. So that is Behind the Briefcase. If you do pop over to the site, please make sure you give it a like and a follow, and I think on YouTube, subscribe. It does help us in terms of getting out there with the audience. So, should we crack on with today's show? I think so. How would I put this? We've got someone today who I'm really, really interested in because it's different to what we've ever done, because we're going to be looking at the world of franchise through this person as well. And they're definitely a ground up person with a real inspirational story that sits behind them. So without further ado, let's introduce today's guest. We've got Cheryl White with us from Apollo Care. So Cheryl, thank you very much for joining us on Behind the Briefcase and the audience. And we are so pleased to have you in the chair today. So welcome.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Thank you for the invite. I was really excited to speak to you all.
Yeah, I was. When the team told me that you were happy to do the podcast, I was okay, right, this will be a good one, because I'm really intrigued by your background too. And we're from very similar parts of the world as well. So actually, even though we're recording this as it stands, across channels of the internet, we're actually not that far in terms of distance, because you're Merseyside area, are you?
Yeah,
So
I'm on Wirral, yeah.
you're
So
on the
not
Wirral.
far.
So
Yeah.
you're over through the tunnel and we get to the other
Yes.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm Southport, so I'm the other side
Oh,
of that
wow.
tunnel.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
So you're not
so
far
we
at
are
all.
very close,
Yeah.
which is really good. And it's really pleasing to hear another Northwest person actually in the chair and successful in business. You'd be surprised how many great entrepreneurs actually come from this area. It's
Yeah.
when you start speaking to them. So it's great. But yeah, one of the things I would say is where you've got from the Wirral, Merseyside, and females. My mum's a born and bred Scouser, and there's just a natural resilience that's bred into you from an early age. I would imagine it's sort of like the fight the world and take it on, and nothing could beat us. So I'm going to be really interested to hear about your upbringing.
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting. And I do come from from a family of very strong women.
Yeah.
Some of them didn't have it easy. But we've always been strong. We're all very close as a family as well, which is lovely. And I really like that.
Brilliant. So just give us a little bit of a brief about who you are without going into it in full, because I don't want you to ruin all my questions, but who you are, what you do, that sort of thing, so the audience can get a full understanding.
Okay, so I'm obviously Cheryl White, and I'm the founder and CEO of Apollo Care Franchising Limited and Cheryl White Franchise Consultancy. So what I do is I've got a home care company, domiciliary care company, and I franchised that business back in 2013, and we now deliver care to thousands of vulnerable adults across the UK. I also help other business owners to franchise. So I work with a handful of business owners each year to do that.
So how, I mean, I normally delve straight back into the past. There's a couple of things that came up when I was doing a bit of research on you that I'll probably go to first. Before we get to the point where you decided to franchise, because I would imagine that wasn't your starting premise, or
No,
was it?
no,
No.
no, it wasn't. No.
So I read somewhere that you were kind of wandering around Australia and decided it was time to start out on your own.
Yeah, so what happened, I was in Australia in 1999, and I was working in a nursing home there. I'd done 1 year of nurse training in the UK, took a gap year, and then went over to Australia for 12 months. And while I was there, I was working in a nursing home, and I hated it, Paul. It was just, we used to start work at 5 o'clock in the morning, and that would be literally when they started to get people out of bed.
Mhm.
And a couple of times I said, this isn't right, you shouldn't. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I then decided to put an advert up in a mall in Sydney. And I thought, if I get 4 clients, like companionship clients or anyone who needs any personal care, I'll do that for 6 months and I'll save enough money to go traveling. So put a little advert up in the shopping mall, and within 24 hours, I had 4 clients, and I went out and I looked after those people for 6 months, and it was lovely. I really, really enjoyed doing it. So the seed was planted about Apollo
Yeah.
Care then. I came back and finished my nursing degree and then started to nurse, and it just stayed with me all of the time.
I was going to say that's quite amazing. So you're in Australia, you're working in taking your gap, you're working in a nursing home, and then there's obviously the entrepreneurial switch has flickered at that moment in time for you to think, do you know what? I'm going to go out and do some work myself here. So realistically speaking, your business started in Australia.
It kind of did, yeah, yeah. And you know what? One day I would love to have a master license in Australia because I'd
Yeah,
feel like it had kind of gone full circle there. But yeah, the business did really start then. It wasn't called Apollo, it wasn't called
yeah,
anything. It was just sort of me doing what I do best and looking after people in their own homes. I was a district nurse. That was my
yeah.
career path then, what I went on to become a district nurse. So it's always been that sort of home care, secondary care setting that I wanted.
So when you were a district, so you came back and you went back to university to finish off, I take it the last 2 years of your nursing
Yeah,
degree.
yeah.
And then did you go straight into district nursing from that point?
So I worked on an elderly medical ward in the Royal in Liverpool
Right.
for 18 months, and then I
Mhm.
went on to become a district nurse on Wirral, which I just absolutely love that job, Paul. It was something that I enjoyed doing every day. It was so varied, specialised in palliative care, and done a lot of work in the community doing that.
So while you were a district nurse, you'd have worked very closely with a lot of the home care agencies. A lot of them were local authority run round about that time as well,
Yeah,
weren't they?
yeah, there was a couple of privates,
Yeah.
but yeah, some of them were local authority
Mhm.
run, and that's when I started to notice there was a huge gap in the market. I
Yeah.
think that there was lots of care companies, Paul. It was saturated with care companies, and it still is.
Yeah.
But the skill set wasn't there.
Mhm.
So when I was asking for when we were assessing a patient, and then we were having to help them to get some social care in place, I could see there was a massive gap between what we were delivering as nurses and what they were delivering as social care. And I know, clinical and social are completely different, but the social does need a specific skill set. And I was just finding that just wasn't there at all. So I started to chat to the care staff about what was happening, and they were telling me all of the horror stories as they do. They were, about the management and everything else that was happening. And I started to think this needs to be done a better way.
So, I mean, let's face it, you are in a very stable job, a job for life, if you like. You
Hmm.
could have been a district nurse for the rest of your life. You're looking at this situation, and I think this is where a lot of people get things wrong because they look at it and go, oh, you've seen an opportunity to form a business and make money. It's normally, no, you've seen an opportunity to make a change, to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. And I think that's how the business has grown and evolved, Paul.
Yeah.
It's been from demand from service users who needed us to help them.
Mhm.
And when we started the original business, I didn't even know what franchising was. I'd never heard of it before, but we were constantly getting people coming in from outside of the area, ringing us saying, we need you to look after us. You look after my cousin's
Yeah.
father, or, and that's when it started to escalate. So it wasn't through, I mean, businesses do have to make money, and I'll always encourage businesses to make money. And we look throughout the Apollo franchise, a lot of the data and the P&L reports, because you've got to have money to be able to provide a really good service. And I love now that CQC are starting to look at the sustainability of care businesses.
Yeah.
So they're asking for
Yeah.
business plans, they're asking for P&Ls, they're asking for cash flows, and they should have been doing that from day one to make sure that these businesses are
Yeah.
stable. So so the business did grow from demand, and when the demand's there, then as a responsible business owner, you need to be able to step up to that demand.
So let me take you back again, and absolutely 100% what you've just said is correct, and I'm sure we're going to delve into that even more. But you're a district nurse, you see the gap, you see the problem. At that point, you decide, okay, this is now the real origins of Apollo Care starting to
Yeah.
form. So how difficult was it for you to give up your career in one place and take the high risk maneuver? Because whilst you've seen the gap, and I think a lot of people, you can very quickly jump the story of one day I was doing this, the next day I'm doing this, and what you see today is because of that, the in between. So you've stopped being a district nurse. Is there anybody around you in your life at that point that may be advising you against this move, or they're actually encouraging you to make that move? Talk me through that whole point and what was going on in your head when you knew what you wanted to do, but you'd be weighing up the risk at the same time.
Yeah, it was a huge risk, Paul, and I started in health and social care when I was 14. I got my first job in a nursing home when I was 14. All of my family come from health and social care. My mum, all of my aunties have all been managers in local
Yeah.
authority homes for years. So it's kind of been bred into us. That's what we do. When we were little, we used to go to the bingos and the nursing homes that our
Yeah.
mums were running, all of that. So it's always been there. But I kind of broke the mold a little bit when I went to university and then became a nurse. And I was the first person in my family to ever do that. So it was like a big thing, oh, our Cheryl's gone to uni and she's done this. And so my mum and dad were really proud when I became a nurse. And then I was, delivering care in our local communities. And everyone knew me as, the district nurse. That's what I
Yeah.
did. So when I decided that I was then going to leave that and start my own business, my dad was like, "What the hell? You've worked so hard. You've got your pension, all of the things." My mum actually encouraged me to do it, and at the time, my mum had just taken early retirement from social services. So I said to my mum, "Well, if I set up this domiciliary care company, would you come in as the registered manager and run it with me? Because I
Right.
can't leave nursing just yet." My little boy was 3 then, he's now 18. He was 3. And I still had a mortgage to pay, I had all of the things. So I was like, well, I can't just give up work. So when I set the business up, my mum came in as the registered manager for me. And I got a coordinator who used to work for my mum in social services. So they knew their job, they knew what they were doing. And I then continued to nurse for 18 months while the
Right.
business was growing in the background. Because I couldn't afford to just come out. It was too risky to just come out of nursing and concentrate on the business. So for the first 18 months, the business was growing alongside me still working. And it was really, really hard, So I'd work 8 till 5, and then I'd pick Daniel up from nursery. I'd get home and then I'd start to do rotas. I'd start to look at the staff. So I was working till sometimes
Yeah.
2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then on weekends, me and my mum would go out and cover the care because we couldn't afford to pay the care staff there. So it was just all consuming when we first started it. And yeah, I think people did look at me and think, what's she doing? Why is she doing that? And even the nurses I worked for, they were saying, Cheryl, do you know what? the area is saturated with domiciliary care
Yeah.
companies. Why are you doing this? And I said to them, mine will be the best, and it is. You know, now we've got the reputation as one of the most preferred providers on Merseyside, and we're really proud of that. So, but it was hard. It was really hard.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
It's the burning the candle at both ends,
yeah,
and also making sure that you can still pay your bills because the money doesn't come in immediately. I mean, uh, I remember the first big contract I won as a training business, and everybody thought, "Oh, you are worth it. You know, this is the catalyst. This is going to take it to next level." And sure enough, it did. But the payment terms that they wanted were 90 days, and the payment terms I had with my team was weekly. So
yes,
you're
yeah,
still like sat there, and then they come through with lots of work, and you're going, I'm going to run out of money before they even pay me at this point.
yeah.
So a lot of things can actually, it's not just a case of we just won this contract. There's so much risk associated to
So much
absolutely
juggling,
everything.
isn't there? Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that's why, Paul, new care companies now, they've got to know what their cash flow
yeah,
is. They need to know that, and they need to understand it. I didn't when I first
yeah,
started, and I remember sitting in the office and thinking, I've got to pay all of my staff tomorrow £8,000 and I'm minus 500 in the bank. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? Luckily, my mum could lend me the money until we then got paid a week later, because again, it was local authority, a lot of
yeah,
it. And the payment terms with them were,
yeah.
were awful. I mean, that, you know, they're 90 days. We've done a lot of work with the NHS, which were great. They were every week, which was good. But balancing that cash flow in the first 2 years was really, really difficult.
Yeah, there's so many times. It's the bit people don't see is when you're sat there panicking about how you're going to
Yeah.
pay people. And I always go back to one moment in my life in the early days where I was sat and I had all these credit card applications laid out on the kitchen floor, and I was trying to work out which were the best ones. And I'd have taken money from anywhere at that point just to support the business. And I remember it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I just sat there and cried. And I'm
Yeah.
not a big crier, but I just sat there crying, thinking, what am I doing? And it's those moments that no one else sees. They see the car that you're driving around in or the house that you
Absolutely.
live in, but they don't realize the pressures that sit with that. So you started. Your mum was obviously a great asset and help to you at that point. Um, and obviously, had such a belief in you that she was loaning you money to get through those early days a long time to support the staff. Was there any point in those early days where you thought, I need to stop this, I need to quit?
Yeah. So, one particular time really sticks out for me, and it was actually the catalyst of change for the business direction. So we have the business. I think we must have had about 35 clients. It wasn't huge. Good staff group. And I was still trying to nurse at the same time. I was doing, all of the stuff. I was only nursing 2 days a week by this point. And I got up one day and I had really bad chest pain. And I thought, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack. Anyway, so just ignored it as nurses do, carried on what I was doing that day, and I thought, this is getting worse. And I started to feel like I couldn't catch my breath. So I took myself up to A&E, went in, they put me on a heart monitor, everything else. And she said, you're having a severe panic attack.
Yeah,
And I thought, something's got to stop. I can't keep doing this to me and to my son. And I was just, the business had just completely consumed me, and I was working all the time. Couldn't rest, really anxious with everything. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to my accountant on Monday, and I'm going to say to her, I need to wrap this business up. I need to sell it, or I'm just going to finish it. I'm going back to nursing because I just can't cope with it anymore. And I went to see her and I was talking to her, and she said to me, have you ever thought about franchising? And I looked at her and I didn't know what it meant, Paul, but I didn't want to
yeah,
look stupid. So I said, oh, I'll have a think about it, but let me have a look. And I got in the car and I Googled what is franchising, and I seen it and I thought, this is typical me. That's what I'm going to do. Didn't look into it, didn't do anything. I found a consultant on the Wirral, and I jumped in with both feet and said, yeah, this is absolutely what I'm going to do. I'm going to franchise it. That was difficult in itself. But we did finally get the business franchised, and it's been one of the best business
yeah.
decisions I've ever made. So much so now that I teach it to other people.
Well, that's it. I mean, this is the bit that's really interesting. I'm glad we got to the point where that has started to become the thought process, because you're running this home care domiciliary business out of the Wirral. I'd imagine it's one office covering the Wirral at that point. Would that be
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, yeah, and it's consuming absolutely everything of you. And then at that point where health starts to kick into it, I'd imagine it was very difficult as well. Um, I'm not saying this to sort of have a dish on men. I would personally turn around and say, of all the businesses that I've run or been head of, the one thing that I've really not had to consume myself with is the upbringing of the children.
yeah,
And that doesn't mean that I took a back seat and I didn't have anything to do with the upbringing of the children, but I was able to concentrate 100% on the businesses to help support the family. Whereas I think as a mom, that's a really tough challenge, because it's very rare that you would get a hands-free approach to that.
yeah,
You've got
never,
to
yeah,
raise.
yeah. And
Yeah,
even now, Paul, I've got two boys now, and I run the house, and I've got a dog, and I've got a horse, and I've got all of the things. So I haven't got even now 100% time to focus on the
yeah,
business. So I knew I needed something. I needed a model where I wasn't needed
yeah.
in the business all the time.
So you've created the blueprint. So you truly believe what you built is successful and it can be replicated at that point when you look at the franchise model.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd imagine at that time, the only franchises people were really thinking about were the likes of McDonald's and Burger King, and
Yeah.
they were like the big franchise models. I mean, in home care at the moment, there's a number of, well, there's not a small number, but well-known names that are franchise models, but most of them have come from an American-based franchise model system,
Yeah.
and just licensed themselves over here. You actually created this from your very own business. You've decided to go out and franchise from that. That is the bit of real interest to me, because where the hell do you start with that? Running your own business, fine, I can do that all day long. It'll be tough, it'll be challenged, but you're the decision maker and everything. And in fairness, you're marketing exactly what you do. Franchise model, you've now got to go sell that to a potential person that wants to run a business
Hmm.
and take on your blueprint. So they don't even get to make their own blueprint, it's yours. So take me through how you do that. And also, I know you said you had a consultant, but there would have to be money put into that for the marketing side of that, surely.
Yeah, yeah, there is, and there's a lot of jigsaw pieces, Paul, that come together to franchise a business. And I think that there are people out there franchising businesses who don't know how
Mhm.
to franchise businesses, and that's not a slur on anybody, because I personally feel you've got to have lived that experience to know how to do that, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what we've done with that. So when I franchise a business now, I don't do it on my own. I've got a team of franchise lawyers, franchise marketers, franchise accountants, and they all come in and support that business owner to turn their model into a franchise. And there is lots of working parts in that. And the two most important parts for me are the legal agreement, to make sure that that's solid and it's watertight and it's ethical between the franchisee and the franchisor. And then also that, as you've rightly said, that marketing piece. How do you market a business like that? Knowing franchising now and being very involved in the business in franchising for over 15 years now, if I sold everything tomorrow and was going to start a new business the next day, I would buy a franchise, because you're skipping all
Okay.
of that stuff that, all of that experience that we've spoken about that you need. You skip all of that to come in and buy this blueprint with a team around you that will support you to grow. And even with the Apollo Care franchise now, we sell our franchises to people from a health and social care sector, but we also sell to people who have never run a care business before, or any type of health and social care business, because we've got that blueprint to show them how that works.
How do you, in terms of that, you've obviously got to go out and find people that want to buy a franchise, and it's a big market. There's a lot of businesses that people won't realize are actually franchise models.
Yeah,
So there's a market out there of people who just want to invest in franchises, or like you say, skip the process of business and go for a named brand that's already established. So when you find those people that actually want to come in, what do you have to do in terms of a vetting process? Because technically speaking, it would only take one of them to ruin brand
Yeah.
Apollo.
Yeah. And so that vetting process is really important, Paul, as well. And I've got 2 full-time staff members who actually take people through that vetting
Yeah,
process. So we do the sales and we're on the franchise port. We probably get around about 50 to 80 inquiries a month for our franchise opportunity, and we award, say, 2 to 3 a year, if that.
right.
So that there's a big, there's a very low conversion rate there of what we do. And we do take people through that inquiry process. So obviously they need to have the capital first to be able to invest, to make sure that the business is sustainable and they're not going to go bankrupt halfway through the process or whatever. So that's really important to us as well. But we look for different, so we've got 4 core values within the Apollo Care business as well, and we look for them in the people that we're speaking to. And Owen, who is one of our franchise partners, he works for me to vet franchisees and, speak to franchisees. He will say no quite often. And when I speak to him, he'll say, they just weren't us. They just weren't
Yeah,
Apollo. So he knows, and he's worked with me now for 7 years. So he knows exactly what we're looking for within Apollo. So we get inquiries coming from all over the place, all over the UK. We've got doctors, we've got health and social care professionals, we've got people who've already got their own portfolio of businesses and would like a care company to add to that. And so now we've got investor type people coming in who want to buy 3 or 4 franchise territories from us. So we make that very clear to them that they buy one first and then they prove to us that they are Apollo, and
yeah.
we take them through the model. But it's really important to get that right. And I think that's where a lot of franchises fall down. They look to scale the business too quickly, and it's not something that you should be doing. We actually pulled out of a couple of awards last year because when we went to the awards, they were rewarding franchisors whoever's grown the quickest, and I
Yeah,
got really cross with it.
yeah.
And I said that shouldn't be an award category,
No.
who's grown the quickest. People are investing their money with you. You should be looking after them and not using them to stack up funds. And I got really cross about it. And we pulled out of them, and I've never been back to those awards again or had anything to do with the people who run it, because it's not the right way to build.
Mm. I'm interested, Cheryl. You said you have 4 core values. So what are they?
So the core values of Apollo are caring, supporting, inspiring, and empowering.
So when you speak to someone, you really want through that conversation to see that they really give a crap about what it is they're going to do,
Yeah,
and care for people and want high standards.
yeah.
And then you'd be looking at that sort of like empowering of others through the system, empowering people. So I get how they form. Are they core values that come from the heart of you as the founder?
Yeah. So them core values have been with us since day one of the
Yeah.
business, and we know our franchisees, they actually teach that to their staff. It's on all of our documents, it's on all of our induction. We talk to new people coming into the business about that. We've got a values-based induction process that all of the teams take their staffing through, and that talks constantly about those 4 values in the business. So, when we're talking to potential franchisees, we're asking them questions, about how will you inspire your staff? How will you support your clients to live independent lives? How will you empower people to move up through the business and promote? So we're always talking to them about those values. We don't just sit and name the 4 values. We're talking to them about that. And obviously caring, it sounds simple, that's a value within a caring company, but it's really
Oh,
important that you do that.
yeah,
And it's not just about the clients, it's also about the staff as well.
absolutely.
Because I believe, Paul, that you're only ever as strong as your staff, your team, your staff members. That's so important. And I think you've got to make sure that they're well looked after and they're cared for, and that they enjoy coming to work as well. So
Well,
we talk to franchisees.
there's a phrase that I always use, just sorry for interrupting on that, and that is, if you don't feel cared for, how the hell are you supposed to care for others?
Exactly. Yeah. When I was doing research for Apollo and I was talking to other community care staff when I was, I'd go into people's houses and they'd be there and they'd say to me, Cheryl, we don't get any travel time. We're rushing and we've got to do this. I was thinking of all of this when I was creating Apollo, and I was thinking that's something that we will never do. We'll never do that. We'll never do 15-minute calls. We'll never do 0-hour contracts. All of those things we don't do. And if we've got franchisees that are coming in, potential franchisees who want to do that, we will always be upfront and say, we don't think Apollo's for you. And I think you need to look at another care company.
I remember though, I actually worked for a domiciliary company in Wigan as I was coming up through my career. And I remember local authorities pushing 15-minute calls on you as if they were security checks.
Yeah.
Or 30 minutes was the maximum that they would give you. I mean, how difficult was it at times? Because when you're starting out your business, you have these clear values, and then you also have your profit and loss. You also have trying to get traction. How difficult was it to be so stringent and stick to that ruling that we were never going to do that, no matter what?
Yeah, sometimes it was hard.
Yeah.
The amount of arguments I've had on the phone with social workers, one in particular, a guy from Wirral, I won't mention his name, I've never had anyone be so rude to me when I said we wouldn't take 15-minute calls. And he was saying, well, you're just money mad, you're just after money. And I was saying to him, but you're not understanding how undignified it is for somebody to try and get ready and get whatever they need in 15 minutes. And when I was nursing once, again, a story I'll always remember, I was dressing somebody's legs. She had bilateral leg ulcers, and a carer came in. And she literally said to her, I've got 10 minutes. What do you want? I'd sandwich you to go to the toilet. And I just looked at this lady and she looked mortified. And she just said, I need to go to the toilet, but it's okay. My son will be here at 5 o'clock. And I said, no, you go to the toilet now and I'll make you a sandwich when I've finished dressing your legs. Because it was 12:30. So she would have sat there, and it wasn't the carer's fault.
No.
But that's what happens in 15-minute calls. So I've always fought for that. And we do a lot of private work now within Apollo, so that's not a problem. People who are paying privately, they want the best for their families, but unfortunately, some people haven't got that luxury. So I know a while back, CQC alluded that if care companies were providing 15-minute calls, that they would then be automatically given a requires improvement, but it's never happened.
No.
And I think it should happen because it's not ethical. It's not a right way to care for somebody.
Well, I think the same thing happened with the 30-minute calls. That they actually ended up becoming 15 to 20-minute calls. And what a lot of care companies would do is they would take on the same packages in very close proximity. And I remember one time doing an audit on a domiciliary company that we were looking to purchase when I was working with the others. And when I looked at the timesheets of staff, because it wasn't electronic then, I'm too old when I go back that time. And it worked out that if you worked out the hours that the person was being paid for the calls they were doing, they were taking around about 12 hours when they had actually only been out on the road for about 7. So they had literally just been popping in and out of houses, but claiming the 30 minutes. And when call logging came in, that's the first time that it actually stopped that.
Yeah. And isn't it interesting, Paul, that when care logging came into play, a lot of the big care companies went under.
Yeah.
They literally disappeared overnight. A huge one on Wirral literally went overnight. And it was because they were doing that.
Yeah, it caught them out straight away.
Absolutely, because they couldn't survive. They were taking hour calls and doing 30 minutes in there, or 15-minute calls and doing 5. And now, and even with the time and the traveling and everything else, I think HMRC need to, and I don't like HMRC, but they need to be looking into more companies who are doing that, because carers can be out for 6 or 7-hour shifts and getting paid for 5, and it's not right.
No.
It's not right, and I don't understand how they're all still getting away with doing that, because it's just not good, is it?
No, when the carer, especially in domiciliary care, when the carer leaves her house, it's a little bit like it would be the same as a taxi driver. The minute that they start to head towards their first client, there should be a charge applicable
to that
until they get back. So And it's not their fault if all of a sudden they find that they've got 20-minute travel distance or 25 minutes. And when you're in a town, it can be, yeah, uh, what is 1 mile can turn around and take you 20 minutes to do
Yeah,
at certain
yeah,
parts of the day.
yeah.
So I do think that the fact that they only, in some companies where they're only getting paid for the actual time they're in someone's house, that's wrong,
Yeah,
because that's
yeah.
not the case.
But then what
As
happens then is they will then cut that care call short
Yeah,
so that they can get to the next
travel
person on
time.
time.
Yeah,
But that's
yeah.
not right. That the
But
client
even
shouldn't
at
be
a
paying for
management
that.
level, they're turning around and doing that. So it's not necessarily just down to the staff member. The staff member may do that to try and get out of trouble, but the managers will turn around and
They're
say, for the
encouraging it.
hour call,
Yeah.
you've got 15 minutes travel time in this. So it's
Yes.
actually only a
Yeah.
45-minute call,
Yeah.
which is incorrect. When you look at the contract from the local authority, it's
Yeah.
for 1 hour's care, or the care plan will be for
Yes.
one
Yeah.
hour's care.
And
So yeah,
the local authority don't pay enough money, and this is
no,
an
they don't.
age-old story, So when you are very local authority based, I can see the need why that needs to
Yeah,
happen, but it still doesn't make it right. The management are trying to save as much money as they can on that care call,
yeah.
and then that goes down to the staff, and that's when you start to get a company that's not run right and it's not run correctly for the clients and for the staff as well.
Absolutely. So, really interested in terms of you have this business, you've started it, it's doing well, you've gone down the franchise model, you know your values, you know the type of people you're looking to bring in to the franchise. How long did it take you from deciding you were going down the franchise route to finding your first person that was willing to write you a check and buy a franchise?
It took me about 2 weeks. So I
Wow.
had, yeah. So I sold my first two franchises to two of my senior care staff who were
Okay.
excellent.
Right.
So they've still got that. They've been with me 12 years now, and they've still got the care companies, and they're doing amazingly well with them. And then about 6 months into franchising, we had a guy who we were looking after his parents, and he came to me and said he wanted to buy into the business. He was a lawyer. And at the time I said no. Well, at the moment we're just looking for people from a
Yeah.
health and social care because of the experience. And he said to me, okay, how much would it be for me to buy this original Apollo, but as a franchise? So I was like, okay. So when I spoke to my accountant, came back with a figure, and he bought that for a six-figure sum, and he's still one of my franchisees now.
So he bought the original one that you built.
Yes, as a franchise.
So yeah, but he had a ready-made business
Yes, yeah.
with clients.
So within 6 months of franchising, Paul, like I suddenly didn't have any care companies to run. I was the franchisor, and I had three franchise teams
Wow.
underneath me, all Wirral teams as well.
So it's still local to you. You could still get round.
So I could still be there. So they were my three originals, and they're now in their third franchise contract with me. So they've all been with me now 12 years. And we then grew out from there. And so I haven't actually run one of the care companies now for around 12
Yeah.
years. I run the business as the franchisor and make sure everyone's compliant and doing what they should be
Yeah.
under the Apollo umbrella.
So I'm interested. Had your mum left as registered manager by the time you sold the original, or is she still
No,
there as registered
so my
manager
mum's
now?
still there as registered manager.
Really? Wow.
So she was still there.
You sold your mum.
I sold my mum, yeah, but I only sold her for 6 months. So I said she'll come in and be registered manager for 6 months, but then you need to get a registered manager, in which they did. I mean, my mum's retired now, but my mum worked in the franchising office with me for a couple of years as well. But I don't think she really enjoyed that because she's health and social care
Yeah.
bred.
Hands on.
When she came in to do the franchise and stuff, it just wasn't what lit her up.
Yeah.
So, but she retired, and that's fine. And I've got a team now that work with me in as the franchise and national office.
So I looked on your website, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it looks like there's about 13 franchises across England at the moment and
15
Wales.
now. Yeah, we've got 15 at the moment.
15, wow.
Yeah, 15 at the moment. Big care teams. And we've got a plan in place to grow that to 40 units over the next 3 to 5 years. So
Wow.
I've got growth consultants working with me now practically full time. And we're pushing that business out now, but again, to the right people that are coming in.
So let me ask you a question. When you put that card up in the mall saying, "Are you looking for companionship care?" Anything along the lines of that. Did you believe at any point at that time that you would be a CEO of a large franchise business?
No, never ever in a million years, Paul. I was just thinking I'll earn a bit of money. It saves me going tomato picking around the farms, I'll do that. But again, it's using the skills that you've got, isn't it? I knew how to do that with my eyes closed. It's something that I'd always done, something that I'd always been around. And I think now, Apollo Care, we're quite special because me as the founder is still very much involved in the business. And because we've had franchisees with us from 10 years, we've seen them get married, have children, divorced, so we're very, very
Yeah.
close to our franchisees as well, which, it makes it something quite special, really.
I love this. Now, Cheryl, I'm not going to disclose your date of birth, even though I did find it. But and just for the audience, what I'm about to say, you're going to gasp. But we were actually born on the same year,
Ah, right, okay.
even though you look so much younger than what I do, which is why I said there'll be a gasp of no way. I had the more difficult paper round, right? So I had the Scouse mum and the Glaswegian dad, so I got the mix of both of them. A lot of people look at me and they will turn around and say, "Will he ever stop?" I've just created business after business, and I never allow them just to be small for some reason. They always start off with, "It's going to be a nice little business," and then
Yeah,
something happens. But there does come a point in your life where you do have to start looking at either where the succession plan is coming from, what you do want to do as you go on. Now, you've just mentioned about the ability to go to up to 40. It's the same within my businesses. Only 2 years ago, I decided each of the businesses needed a managing director because before that, I was the managing director of everything. So
mhm,
it was like your head was spinning on a plate 6 times a day in six different directions of the businesses. Bringing the MDs in allowed me to take a step back and look at the businesses from a different angle, and really start to work out what the future looked like for them. I think it's very important for me in finding the right people that sit within your senior management team who will one day almost push you out
yeah.
and say, "Go retire, go be a pain in the ass to someone else." Do you ever get those thoughts, or do you still look at yourself and go, "Oh, no, I'm way too young for that"?
No, those thoughts are always there, Paul. And I think even though I enjoy what I do, I think any business that you're going to grow, scale, and sell, you've got to replace you in it. You
Yeah,
can't be in it all of the time. And I see some fantastic businesses, and I think, but if you were sick, that business wouldn't exist
yeah,
tomorrow. So you've got to replace yourself within your business, and some people can't do that because it's an ego thing, isn't it? Like you say, this runs me. It's like
yeah,
people will come to me and say, I'd love to franchise my business, but this business couldn't run without me. It probably could,
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, and it's being honest with people about that. But yeah, so in the next 12 months, I'm going to be looking to replace myself as CEO in the business, and I'll bring a new CEO in. I will be the founder always, but I would like to, yeah, totally replace myself in the Apollo business, which will then give me more time to do the consultancy work, which I love doing as well.
So this is what, so I found myself, especially in the last 2 years, actually doing a lot of consultancy work, especially whereas your consultancy is around to the senior executive or the owner of a business in how to actually build the franchise model. Mine's very much sort of like the growth and scalability of your own business or exit strategies or finding the right people. But there's so much demand out there, and I think it comes down to the fact that, you mentioned about how you started working care at 14. I had exactly the same upbringing, and that's why I
Mm.
mentioned that we were born the same year, because ultimately, before the national minimum care standards came out, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So we'd have lost that experience that we got
Oh
early
gosh, do
doors.
honestly, Paul, I remember walking along, there's a big road in my locally called Bidston Road. And years ago, it was full of private care
Yeah,
homes, residential care homes.
yeah,
And I could literally walk in there of a Friday and say, do you have any jobs? And they'd have you in there
yeah,
Monday. There
absolutely,
was nothing,
absolutely.
nothing.
Yeah.
No references, no nothing.
No, my first job in a care home, I was interviewed that morning, and within about 40 minutes, I was on the floor. It happened that
Yes.
day.
Yeah, that's how it was, yeah.
And you're right. I mean, Southport itself was the haven for care homes at one
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
So I think when we've been doing it for such a long time, we have so much experience, but that experience is also coupled with the what not to do.
yeah,
And I think that's where the role of consultancy, you do feel like it isn't about money. It's not about creating a large consultancy business. It's about advising the new versions of you, the up and coming versions of you, to go, you need to be careful of all these traps that are set out along the way. I mean, my biggest bugbear ever, and they hate me for saying it all the time, is PR companies. PR companies will tell you that they're going to make you the biggest thing since sliced bread. We just need to change everything, and then they change everything, and nothing changes as a
yeah,
result of that. And then
yeah,
the next PR company comes in and says the same. When actually, I've always thought to myself, I need market it. How did you start the business in the first place? And you sit there and you go, me on social media,
yes,
or me
yeah.
marketing, or me going out and networking. It was me. Why don't we go back to that with more people? And
Do you know
that
what? I
seems to
think
work.
people kind of are at the minute. So we're seeing a big trend at the moment on personal branding. You know, people are going back to that personal brand.
Yeah,
You know, 10 years ago it was build your business brand. People don't need to know
yeah,
who's behind it. Like, you know, who knows who started Coke, a cola, who knows who you know, all of the things. Um, but now there's a shift around, you know, sort of when you're looking at I'm just going to take Stephen Bartlett for an example.
yeah,
Everyone knows who he is, but hardly anyone knows what his companies are called, you know. So I don't even know, so I can't even say what they are, but you know, so people do follow personal brands now, and I think it's sort of it's moving away from so my franchise consultancy business used to be called Mercury Franchise School, and it still gets known as Mercury Franchise
yeah.
School because that's what it's been for the last 10 years. And I rebranded that just over 12 months ago now to Cheryl White Franchise Consultant because people need to know who it is that's going to be
Correct,
leading them through that process, and it's
correct.
me.
Yep,
You know, we've built a 6-month program in that now for people who are thinking about franchise, and it's called Franchise Foundations, and it literally takes somebody through it for 6 months. I would then decide after that 6 months if I wanted to franchise their business for them. Because I get to know them, and they
yeah,
would then decide if their business wanted to be, if they wanted to franchise it. And if after the end of that 6 months they don't want to franchise it, well, the business is still going to be in a really good position because we've worked on 6 core things throughout that, what we would look for to get a business really ready to be replicated or, you know, build the blueprint or whatever. But when I'm speaking to people in that, I'm always saying to them, your personal story needs to come through.
mhm,
Because if you've got a choice of, you know, if somebody's looking at 10 franchise brands, they're going to choose the person who resonates the most with them. And we're finding that now as well in Apollo. So I had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with 2 doctors, and they came over from Birmingham, and you know they're going through the process of buying an Apollo franchise now. Lovely, lovely guys, really easy conversation, and I really like them. And they said to me, it's the team. It's the team that we're buying into because they love the team and who we are and what we stand for and where we've come from. And that is all personal branding, whether you realize it
it
or not.
is. But I also think, I'm sure you, and I know you had your mom. I had my mom. I had my sister as well when I first started out, and they were always key to every business that I developed, including my wife Rebecca, who's always been at the heart of everything. They've just trusted you, but it's still when you start out, it's such a lonely environment. You
Yeah.
may be surrounded by a lot of people, but you're on your own.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
you don't have people to turn around who understand your concerns or speak your language at that time or see the frustrations because everybody around you will just turn around and say, well, why don't you just stop? Why don't
Yeah.
you just stop it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't have the person that's sitting there and saying, well, why would you want to stop it? Are you stupid? Of course, you're going to go through this period of time, this roughs and smooths. It was
Yeah.
never going to
Yeah.
be a glass slipper moment. But you also want the person to turn around and say, well, you need to focus on where you're getting your return on investment from. And a
Yeah.
return on investment doesn't always have to be finance. So I think when you spoke about the 2 doctors, what they're actually saying is they don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
They've
They've got
got
a
people
ready-made
in the
team.
know, and that
Yes.
that
Yeah.
must be such a relief at that point to be able to
Yeah.
lean on people.
It is because you're coming into a business, Paul, with, ready-made mentors
Yeah,
there. When you're starting off on your own, I think when you're on your own, the best thing you can get is a mentor, a
yeah,
business mentor from day one. But a lot of people can't afford that. They put the
correct.
money on the wrong things, like
Yeah,
you've just said. They think they need the fancy website. They think they need the PR. They think they don't. What they need is somebody they can talk to. And
yeah,
sometimes mentors do things for free. People have reached out to me and
absolutely.
said, have you
Yeah,
got a spare hour? I just want it. And I will always do that to help someone, so that mentoring doesn't always have to be paid for. But I think having that mentor there, and with a franchise model, you're coming in, you've got the national office and the founder there as mentors, but you've also got a load of other franchisees who have been through this process as well. And we have a WhatsApp group of our franchisees, and it's just great, and they all support each
yeah,
other on there. And
absolutely.
the newbies get a buddy for 12 months who they work with an established franchisee. So you're already coming in with that. Oh, you've got that blueprint there, but you've got an Apollo family around you, we call it, that are
Mhm.
there to lift you up and support you from, when it gets to sort of month 3 and month 4, and you're starting to get your clients in and it's a bit bitty, when we're saying to them, this is absolutely normal. This is what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah. I think there may be some people listening to this who have heard the word franchise, and I was just thinking this myself as you were talking, but they're kind of getting bit parts to what it is. A franchise model, how does yours work compared to the likes of McDonald's, let's say? So just for the listener, if I wanted to buy a McDonald's site, then I would go through a process and I may get lucky enough to be given that McDonald's. However, everything that is done in there, the menus, the food deliveries, the arrivals, how you serve it, the uniforms, everything like that is controlled completely by McDonald's. So you can't put your own things on the menu. You can't design your shop the way that you want to design it. So all you are doing is buying almost a flat pack building, and you're not allowed to do anything with it other than operate it and run it. With your model, is it the same, or do you allow the franchisees to have a form of freedom within it?
It's a bit of both, Paul, really. So anything that's CQC compliant or Apollo standard compliant, then there's no wiggle room on that.
Yeah,
So the franchisees have to use our policies and procedures. They have to use our recruitment system. They have to use all of our care software systems, or all of the stuff that we use to make sure that the business is safe and protected and is run compliantly under CQC. That they've got to comply with that. Things that they can do themselves. So the likes of services, so we have certain services set out, but how they deliver them it can be slightly different to each franchise. There's not an awful lot of wriggle room with that, but what I would say is that each franchisee brings their own sort of
yeah,
personality to their brand.
yeah,
And I think that's really important because the way we deal with people up here, the way people deal with people down south, it's miles apart. So that person brings in their own sort of community culture and everything that they do with that. So there is a lot of standards that they've got to comply to, but that suits some people because they're coming into a business where they don't need to really think about what they're going to offer as a service. They don't need to think about the CRM systems. They don't need to think about, well, where are the clients going to be referred from, because that's already set up there for them. Something that we allow is pricing, so they can set their own pricing as well.
okay.
And that you must do that within a franchise, otherwise it's seen as a pyramid scheme. So you've got to make sure that the franchisee is allowed to set their own pricing, which we do. And we have conversations with franchisees that they're not charging enough, or they need to, relook at their pricing. And we have a full-time support manager who does that within Apollo. Dom, he's fabulous, and he supports all of our teams with their growth and their plans. But there is a lot of structure there, and it needs to be there.
Mhm.
And again, when I'm talking to people who are thinking about franchising the business, and they say, I'm worried I'm going to lose the control. Well, you never will lose the control if you grow strategically and you make sure that all of these things are in place.
Now there is some franchises out there, Cheryl, where that they could have built the business up in a certain area, and then and I know one particular company. I won't name it, but I know the exact story because I know the owner of the franchise and I know the owner of the service. So he built it up to a really good business, and then his contract was up. So he was contracted. It was almost like a lease term contract. And they took it off him because they got given a substantial offer for that service. So technically speaking, he had two options. One option was he was allowed to buy himself out of the franchise, or he was allowed to walk away from the franchise. So he ended up having to buy himself out of the franchise, which meant the next day he sets up under his own name. But next to him comes the franchise office that was his name. And ultimately, all the marketing and everything like that had been done in the area. People were able to think, well, that's still the same business, even though it wasn't. So I guess what I'm getting at is, do people need to be very careful when they look at franchise models that it's not all this glossy thing? What are the T's and C's? Because there is some serious pitfalls there. In that case, he's ended up having to pay out a lot of money to get out of the franchise, or he was going to lose it. And secondly, he's almost starting again in terms of branding wise.
Yeah. I mean, that's an extreme, Paul, and I think
Yeah.
that's very unethical franchising. I would always recommend anybody that's buying into a franchise to get the franchise agreement looked at by a franchise lawyer. It must be a franchise lawyer so that they understand that. My franchise lawyer is on the board of the BFA, so we make sure that everything we do is ethical. We make sure that the franchise agreement is fair to franchisee and franchisor. And I think any good legal agreement, so our terms are 5-year terms. If we were going to not re-sign with somebody, we'd have to have a really good reason why, and we'd have to have evidence there to back that up of why we were not re-signing with them, because that franchisee could potentially sue us if we just suddenly come in and said, well, we're taking this off you now because it's doing really well. That, we would, as franchisor, I would not be allowed to do that under my legal agreement. The only time I would ever terminate a franchise is if they breached under gross misconduct within the franchise agreement, which I've had to do once. So there should be, a legal agreement should be ethical to the franchisee and the franchisor.
Yeah. I guess the message I wanted to hear it from yourself as well is there's good and bad in everything. There'll be really good franchise models out there. There'll be really terrible ones that are literally, what I would say, royalties, licensing fee, money grabbing, because the franchise model is, like you said, who can grow the fastest, who can make the most profit. It's
it's not right. And I see people, especially in the coaching industry, that claim to have franchise models, and they'll claim that they're the fastest growing franchise in the UK and this and that. They're not franchise models, they're licensing models. And when you look at it and you look into it, you can clearly see that they're not franchise models. There's no inquiry process. You click on a button, buy now, and you get what they want. It's not a franchise. And I think it's really damaging to the industry when people are claiming that. And it makes me really cross to see it. And some of the big names in women's coaching are trying to do that now. And it just makes me really, I don't like it at all.
Cheryl, I'm going to put you on the spot now. When you look back at your time, you started out at the age of 14, as you said, really into the world of business. What 3 things did you need, or did you grow inside you that made you become who you are today? Over your journey in time, there'll be 3 things that you really capitalized on about yourself that's helped you on this journey to get there.
I think the first thing was I was good at what I did. I was a really good carer, and I was a really good nurse as well. And I could have gone, up at one point. I was thinking, should I become a sort of a GP practitioner, a nurse practitioner? I was looking at all of the options for that, but I realized from a very young age that this is what I did, and there was no other thought of doing another career from that. It was always something that I wanted to do. I think the second thing was it helped me to become very independent, Paul. I've always relied on me for my own money, and I'm still exactly the same now. Whatever I've got, I've bought it. I am very independent, and I teach my boys to be exactly the same, although they do take the mick a little bit when they need things. But I've always been very independent, always relied on myself, and I always make sure that I've got enough money before I spend it. I never get into debt for anything. I always, obviously, not the house, we have a mortgage, but the way that is. And And then the third thing, I think it's resilience there as well. I've come up against some really, really tough times in my nursing career and in business as well. And now I know I can get through them. I'm a lot calmer now than what I was 10 years ago. I've done a lot of self-development work. I do a
Yeah.
lot of spiritual work. I do lots of different things. And I am a lot calmer now. But I think, yeah, just that resilience piece there is, I think that's important for anybody who wants to grow.
Do you know that last point? I've given that a lot of thought over time because people actually turn around to me now and say, you're completely different to what you
Mm,
used to be. And when I look back at who I was, particularly in the early days of starting out, I don't like to label myself as the aggressor, but people would label that term to me. If something went wrong,
mm,
I was your Gordon Ramsay. I'd fly off the handle.
yeah,
I had no problem, and it sounds awful saying it out loud, but I had no problem launching a mobile phone across the room or
yeah,
everybody's getting it at that moment in time. And I was a complete and utter stress head. I think as time's gone on, I think what happens, and it's where the resilience falls in, is in the early days, every time something went wrong, it was normally a first time. And it was always catastrophic. The world
yeah,
was going to end. We're going to go bust. The regulator's going to close us down. We're going to be all over the front page of the
yeah,
newspaper. Yeah, we're getting sued. They'll take us to a tribunal. Everything was always the worst it could possibly be, and it never happened. And I just wonder now, as you get older, there's so many things that happen, and I see everybody else running around and stressing, and I'm like the one that's gone, right, just calm down, take a step
yeah,
back. Let's
yeah,
have a look at this. What's the worst that's going to happen? And they'll say, they say, well, that's not going to happen, is it? Right.
yeah,
So I don't know whether it's just we've experienced more crap than most that actually we realize it's not the end of the world every time. Which means when we do get that stressed moment, because you still get it, it's normally something new again, or it's
yeah,
something you've been hit
yeah.
with in the
Something you
past.
haven't dealt with,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Um,
think as business owners, though, we do catastrophize everything. That's what we do, and it's probably why we've been successful because we do that.
yeah.
But I think one of the biggest things for me is I used to blame Paul, so I'd blame the economy, I'd blame the local authorities, I'd blame and blame, and now I totally take responsibility for it.
Yeah.
So whatever's happening, and a couple of years ago, I had a big meeting online with all of the it wasn't a couple of years ago, actually, it was last year. It was all of the home care franchises, and we all had a big meeting about the NI. This is what we
Yeah.
did. And everybody was going to London and lobbying, and everybody was doing what they were doing, and everybody was getting really upset on the call. And I totally understand why. And I said, I think it went down like a lead balloon, but I said, I really respect everything that you're all doing, but it's not going to make any difference. The government aren't going to change it. So I think rather than spending all of your time worrying about it and going to London and lobbying, take responsibility, look at your business now, speak to
Yeah.
your franchisees, and let's prepare them for what's going to happen because it
Absolutely.
is going to happen no matter what we do. And everybody just sort of went and looked at me, but that was the stance that I took on it. And I also said to the franchisees, you employ your own staff through your limited companies. This is going to happen. You need to take responsibility for it, and this is how we're going to help you to do it. The majority of the franchisees did. A couple of them took no notice of me and got themselves in a right mess, and we've had to help them and we've sorted them, and it's all fine. But I kept going back to them and saying, but you chose not to listen, so it's your
Yeah.
responsibility. And I think the minute you take responsibility for something, it gives you your power back rather than thinking, do you know what, this has happened and it's a nightmare and I'm going to get all stressed about it. I allow myself 12 hours, 24 hours to do that. And my CEO, Dawn, knows exactly how I am, and she leaves me alone for that
Yeah.
time. And the next day, I'll come on a call to my team and I'll say, right, we need to take responsibility for this. What are we going to do to change it?
Yeah.
And that's given me so much more. It just gives you that peace of mind back that you're back in control of it.
I think that's the key part, isn't it? It's like looking at a situation and going, okay, what can't I control and what can I control?
Yeah,
So I always give the sort of like analogy of we're going to have a barbecue and it starts to pour it down with rain. Well, you can't control the weather. There's nothing you can do about that. What can you control? Well, you can put something over the barbecue. You can,
yeah, yeah.
you
It's the
can
same.
put a marquee up in the garden, wherever it may be. Not saying everybody's got marquees, but ultimately you've got to look at the problem and go, right, what's within our control that we can do something about? And like you
Yeah,
said, take back that element that you can control. Every single business up and down the country faced, and we'll do again in April. There's a number of changes that are coming in
yeah,
again that will affect. The government made changes which had drastic effects on businesses. There's no getting away from that. I think for myself, there was, within my businesses, there was definitely a 3 to 4 month rocky road, and that preceded what was about to happen in terms of getting your affairs in order. But there was an impact. But the key bit for me was making sure that you have to have one, cash flow, but two, you have to have a fighting fund available for these moments. It was the same for COVID. It was the same when we've gone into an economic recession, cost of living crisis. If you are spending every penny that goes into that business and you're not building up your contingency,
yeah,
then the
yeah.
first strong wind that comes
It's gone.
takes you out.
Yeah,
And you have to be in a position where I always look at it and go, I always want to, in a business, get in a position where we could have no money coming in for a year, but I could still afford to pay everything out. If I can
yeah,
get a year ahead of myself,
yeah.
then that's a thriving business at that point. We're ready for a
I
fight.
think it's, yeah, and I think it's planning forwards, Paul, because realistically, some people can't do that with,
Yeah,
with their money and their cash flow. But I think, anything that's going to happen in business, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not going to be this one day and then that the next day. Even though I don't agree with a lot of the government changes at the
absolutely.
moment, they do give you, they will say this is going to come into play in 12 months, this is going to come into play in, and we have a HR solicitor, Nick, who works within the Apollo team. He's brilliant, and he looks after all of our teams. And he always gives us, this is what's going to happen in 6 months, and this is how we're going to deal with it. So you then have got that time in that 6 month period or whatever to build that resilience up towards that. So one of the things we said to our teams is, if you are predominantly local authority clientele, you need to change that in the next 12 months, otherwise you're going to struggle with your profit and loss.
Yeah,
And one of our teams just completely turned everything around, and she went 100% private clients in 12 months, and she is flying along. So we've been saying that now for the past 18 months to our teams. You need to be predominantly private clientele or you're going to struggle, because there's no money in the local authority
no,
clients. And
no,
although we want to help everybody, you've got to be realistic in what you
yeah,
do. So it's preempting that, isn't it? And it's business planning and thinking, right, do you know what's going to change within the business in the next 12 months? And you don't need to, people who are creating businesses or they're growing businesses, they think they have to keep inventing new stuff. They
yeah.
don't need
You
to do
don't,
that. They just need to pivot on what they're doing now and
absolutely.
look at where they need to go in the next 12 to 18 months. And if everybody did that, the businesses would be so much stronger going forwards.
And that's a great message. And it's absolutely true. That ability to just pivot, and sometimes it's only by a degree, but
One
just
percent,
pivot.
yeah,
Yeah,
just one
absolutely.
little thing, and that,
Yeah,
if I was starting a business, Paul, today, I wouldn't start something new. I'd think, okay, what do I enjoy doing?
yeah,
What is everybody else doing within that industry, and how can I do that the same, but with my own stamp on it, and just pivot it slightly? That's the way I would start a business
yeah.
now.
Now, when we were speaking before, I'm not sure when this is going to go out, but the London franchise show is it in April or May? Which
It's in April, yeah,
in
17th,
April?
16th and 17th of April.
I'd have to push them to knock this right up the ladder for that one. I'll get them to put a snippet out no matter what of this little segment that I'm about to do. So you mentioned before your company's gonna have a stand there and you'll be there. Okay.
Yes.
Just do me a favor, Cheryl. Just give it a little broadcast now so I can snippet this bit and make sure it goes out on the podcast. So people, if they are in London, if they are interested in a franchise, can come and chat with you.
Yeah, so we're at the London Franchise Show in April. I think it's the 16th and 17th of April, and we'll be there as Apollo Care Franchising Limited. So come and find us and say hello.
Absolutely. And just as not to put you off, I think I'm there too, speaking on a panel. So you can come say hello to me. Not that you probably want to say more to Cheryl than me, but I'll be there. So get yourself along. Okay, Cheryl, we've gone way past the hour mark, which I knew we would do. And there's so much more I could chat to you about. And away from behind the podcast, I hope we do get the opportunity to sit and have a proper natter
Be lovely. Yeah.
about things, because I absolutely love what you've done. I just want it all through this, all that's been niggling in my head is Dad was like, "What the hell are you doing?" So is Dad still with us?
Yes. Yeah.
So if I was to go to Dad now and say, "Would you take back those words?" Do you think he would?
You would. Yeah. He's really proud of what I do now.
How
Yeah.
does that make you feel?
Great. Yeah. And it's lovely for me because he's always really there's four of us. I'm the eldest, so I've got two brothers and a sister, and he's always been so supportive and
Yeah.
it's just amazing. He's probably one of the most amazing people I know, so he's always been there for us all. And he worries about us, whenever I drive anywhere, I've got to ring him when I get there still and ring him when I get back and all of the things. But yeah, he's really proud.
Cheryl, I think a lot of people would be proud of you. And I'm telling you now, and I'm not saying this to try and put an emphasis on it, but you're a girl from the Wirral who's created this and will go on to create more and give so much and has changed so many lives because of what
Yeah.
the passion, desire they had. You're an inspiration not just to men and people going into business and younger people, but to the young girls out there, because most franchises are dominated by the really characterized males, the domineering type of people, and you are the complete opposite to that. So I think a lot of girls listening to this, a lot of people listening to this, they're going to be extremely proud of you, and you are going to be an absolute role model to them to actually go forward and have a go at it
Mhm.
yourself. Are you, in terms of it, if there is people out there that want to reach out to you personally, is LinkedIn the best route?
Yes, I've got a LinkedIn profile,
Yeah,
which is Cheryl White, and then also on Instagram at Cheryl White Franchise Consultants, so they
yeah.
can reach me on both.
I hope you've enjoyed your episode on Behind the Briefcase. I thoroughly have. As I said, I could have gone on for a lot longer because there was so many different areas that I'd love to go down. Certainly want to have a catch up with you outside of this. But that's it. We better shut this shop up because people will be finishing on the treadmill now or in the gym session or in the car. They may have got home and be parked in the car park waiting to get into the house and thinking, I wish he'd shut up. So we will end it for you now. So I hope you've loved this episode, everyone. As I said, I have. I think the insight's been amazing. And similar to Cheryl, I think a lot of people will be able to take this at heart. When I first started as a care worker, I didn't have natural dreams to go on and become a manager. I didn't have dreams and aspirations to own my own care home. I didn't have dreams and aspirations to go to university and do a teaching degree and become a teacher. Didn't have aspirations to then go back to university and become a therapist. I didn't think that any of those qualifications I would do would lead to other business models that I would build and grow that would become international. I was just a carer. And still today, I'm just a carer. A lot of people don't need to go to business school. They don't need to do an MBA. They just need to, and excuse my language, really give a shit about what they do and what they want to change, and then trust themselves to do it. Because you're always going to find people like me and Cheryl out there that will wrap an arm around you straight away and kick you up the ass when you need it, motivate you when you're feeling down, and applaud you when you're standing on the podium. Don't let anybody ever put you off, but don't start something unless you genuinely care and want to make a difference. That's what I would say. That's how you build a successful business, because the money, it sounds awful what I'm going to say, it's nothing. It's the pride you have in yourself for what you created and the people you surround yourself with to work that model. So I'll leave you with that message on Behind the Briefcase, and I will catch you next time when we'll have another amazing guest. So make sure you give us a follow, a like, subscribe, and you'll get all the snippets that come out. But Cheryl, thank you very much. And to everybody else, have a great week.